Hi, this is Rick Harsch, chief editor of Corona Samizdat, former writer, maybe still a writer, I don't know yet. That's up in the air. I am a publisher still. I'm coming to you with a flashlight because we're trying out I'm being professionally filmed, um, and because Sasha wanted to try a new lens, I think. What is it called?
Anamorphic.
Anamorphic lens, and this should provide some cool effect. I'm not sure.
Anamorphic flares.
Anamorphic flares. Okay. Anyway, I look forward to seeing it myself. The reason I haven't done any YouTubes in the last couple of weeks or so is because I'm in a reading slump. I've been in a reading slump for some time. I'm not finishing many books. I enjoy what I read, but then I just get stuck. I can't go on. And interestingly enough, Beckett was the last one. I decided I know what I'll do to get out of my slump. I'll read all of Beckett. Usually, if you set a goal, um, it you're more likely to keep up with something. But there's something going on inside my mental skull, and as opposed to my other skull, and I'm just not able to do it. So I decided to switch to nonfiction, and I'm going to talk about the nonfiction today. The first attempt at reading, I saw somebody on Instagram post about some history books, and there was a trilogy about the Third Reich, this one right here, and I thought, why not read about the Third Reich? What I realized in the meantime is that a lot of people are doing it because of their concern about the rise of fascism in the United States. Um, my main concern about the rise of fascism in the United States is the effect that it's had on the genocide in Gaza. Um, it's taken a lot of attention away from it, ironically or paradoxically, by um, the United States government jailing um, people who simply protest uh, or speak out about Gaza. And they're being disappeared at rates that we don't even know if we're keeping up with. So that I found out. Oh, okay. So I'm basically in tune with the reading public. So, okay, the first book in the trilogy is called The Coming of the Third Reich, which covers sometime in the mid 19th century up until 1933. And, I read the whole thing. I don't know, about 700 pages, 600 pages. And it was what was most interesting to me was the incidence of anti-Semitism, the phenomenon of anti-Semitism in Europe and Germany in the 19th century. Uh, what was of particular note was a point that the author made by saying, if you'd have asked in, say, 1870, if you'd have described what was going to happen in that we know happened in Nazi Germany, and you'd have said this is going to happen in a European country, what country do you think it would happen in? He'd have said, he said, people would have thought France, maybe, or Russia, for good reasons. The Dreyfus Affair famously happened in France, although after 1870, I don't know what year it was actually. And there were frequent pogroms in Russia. But the point he was trying to make is that the anti-Semitism in Germany was sort of your run-of-the-mill anti-Semitism. You know, people kind of didn't like Jews, and now and then, if something really bad was happened that could be blamed on Jews, they would maybe do it. But there wasn't really a lot of talk about that. And yet, at the same time, as the book continued, and he talked about the growth of the Nazi Party, the cast of characters is immense. and he talked about how certain people met certain people who got into the party, and one of the most common themes was anti-Semitism. Oh yeah, I like this party. That guy hates Jews. So, um, although I trust his characterization and um, his metaphor or whatever, or his what the fuck is the word? Sasha, you know what I mean?
No, I'm not.
Okay, his hypothetical. His hypothetical, makes sense, and it's probably true enough. But at the same time, the should I look at the? Okay, yeah. Sorry, I you know, I haven't been on camera for a long time, and so anyway, uh, at the same time, I think he undermines his argument. I don't know if in France or in Russia, where there were outbreaks of anti-Semitism, if the day-to-day anti-Semitism was as deep or as powerful as it was in Germany. Anyway, it's an interesting concept to me because um, the only thing that I can say about growing up in suburban United States, suburban Chicago, that well, my first two girlfriends were Jewish, kindergarten and fifth grade. So I went from kindergarten to fifth grade, and actually I did have a girlfriend in between. She was Nordic, but so I did have two of my first three were Jewish. And the weird thing is, there are no feelings at all attached to that phenomenon. It's just like, you know, if I said one of them had webbed feet and one of them had blonde hair, it wasn't anything that meant anything. And yet I knew. Why did I know? I don't know. I mean, I knew when I met my first classmate who was black, um, and I remember that I had a good friend named Rey Escamilla who was Hispanic. And I don't know if there are other Hispanics, but I mean, the thing about Jews is you can't tell by looking at them. I know that in the second volume we get a lot of the second volume is called The Third Reich in Power. This one I didn't read because I did read about the Night of the Long Knives, but I was just kind of bored. I know the outlines. I know it in cartoon fashion. I've read William Shirer like 40 years ago, and I know enough about it. But I did enjoy reading about the Night of the Long Knives because I needed to learn more about it because I did have a cartoon version in my head. There were millions, literally, of SA soldiers, and so the version that you see on television or in movies is a bunch of SA soldiers, including Ernst Röhm, are all fucking each other, and a bunch of SS soldiers come in and shoot them off. And that means there are like at least dozens. Not at least dozen, and most dozens. That's kind of, you don't get the sense in Hollywood of, the enormity of the Night of the Long Knives. And why was it just one night? I think, I can't remember exactly, but, I'll tell you, in person if you visit. So I didn't really find that very interesting. Uh, but then I started the Third Reich at War, and he announces early on that there's just it's such a large scope. He's only going to cover certain fronts, and I think that the only thing about that I don't like, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll maybe at times I'll think, okay, let's move on to Stalingrad. I've read a lot about Stalingrad. Best thing I've read was fiction. Seshu Foster has a section in his book, Atomic Aztecs, about Stalingrad. That's the best war writing in Stalingrad that I've ever read. And yeah, hold it. Sasha wants to see what book this is. Wants me to hold it up steady. So, okay. Is it flaring?
Yeah, too much.
Okay.
Turn it off.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You know, there's a low tolerance for viewers. You know, we're probably most of the viewers who started this are already gone. They've already turned it off. And you know, but I never worry about that. I just go on and talk the same way I always would. And so we're done with those. The next book I got is called The Devil's Chessboard. Let me see. Alan Dulles, the CIA, and the Rise of America's Secret Government. Why did I read this? Well, because more and more documents come out these days about events over the past 50 to 70 years. You know, this cache of documents was supposedly, or did come out about the JFK assassination. And so I thought, well, at the very least, this will be a good review. Where's my flare? Oh, okay, never mind. Flares too much. It'll be a good review of the overthrow of Arbenz in Guatemala, for instance, and other known CIA operations, and maybe I'll learn a little something extra about others. As it turns out, it was very good on Arbenz, and very good on Patrice Lumumba. That one could make you cry. I mean, even a grown man like me. And so it was some very good information on that. But the weird thing is that Dulles, you know, that monstrous hero of Raging Joy's Sublime Violations, which is up here. These are some of our microline books, put up here to look good. But I talk about them a lot, but sell them little. And I really don't know why you all haven't read Raging Joy's Sublime Violations, the best Vietnam book ever written, fiction or nonfiction. It's fantastic. He knows how to capture the spirit of the event and tell things in a comic way and comic strip way that actually elucidate the events of the time. You know, for instance, you know, let's talk about John F. Kennedy, because this book does halfway through turn into a Who Killed Kennedy, or less of a Who Killed Kennedy than, of course, Alan Dulles was very much involved. And if in no other way, and there was definitely other ways, there definitely were other ways, he got himself on the Warren Commission and very much guided the investigation, quashed what needed to be quashed, emphasized what needed to be emphasized, manipulated what needed to be manipulated. But the interesting thing about this book is it's the first one I've read where the guy basically just comes out and says, look, you know, we know now that it wasn't Oswald acting alone. And it probably wasn't even Oswald at all. And so then he casually says that, and in a very convincing way, and goes on to be even more convincing simply by focusing on Dulles. And, well, Kennedy, this guy, he ordered he approved the assassination of the Zim brothers, No Din and No New Jim. I don't know what anyway. About a month before he was killed, which is something that I always think about when I think about the Oliver Stone movie JFK, which has so much convincing argumentation, which has been buttressed by accumulated evidence over the last 30 years and has been put out again and again by Oliver Stone. He's becoming more and more convincing, except for the motive. When the motive is Kennedy was going to pull us out of Vietnam, I think, well, yeah, and a month before he was killed, he approved the assassination of the Jim brothers. It just doesn't convince me. But at the same time, what does convince me is that it's dark enough for Alan Dulles. The whole event fits him even better than that zoot suit he's wearing on the cover. So it was very, very interesting in that regard. Although it made for an odd reading experience because you're reading about Dulles and the CIA, you read about Dulles in the OSS in Switzerland, and really damning stuff. Much of which I knew about, but the more detail, the better. You find out how he saved in the life of a Nazi who was surrounded by Italian partisans in the north of Italy by, through connections, getting a few cars simply sent down to where the guy was sort of in a fortress villa, and just picked him up, took him away, well, after that, I think this is noted in all kinds of places. I recommend going to YouTube, where you are already, and just turn this off and type in Gladio. There's a 2.5-hour video that'll talk about Nazi collecting by people like Alan Dulles, and Dulles also set up the famous Richard Gehlen organization of Nazis in Germany, and so that's something I already knew, but I got more details about it. And another thing I knew was that some people, I didn't know for sure if it was Dulles, I don't know if I even thought about it, but the existence of concentration camps was known very, very early in the almost in the first days. The first trial shower was in the Auschwitz area, in the Auschwitz camp, and someone who was very disturbed by that went to Switzerland and got word to U.S. officials, and it turned out to be a cul-de-sac of Alan Dulles, who never sent the information to 10 what?
10 minutes left.
10 minutes left. Really? What's the deadline?
30.
30? Oh, okay. I'm already over 20? Bisa die Matana. So anyway, Dulles, it took him more than 2 years to acknowledge or spread the information that these concentration camps were there. But could anybody have done anything? Yeah, they could have bombed the fucking railroads instead of the cities. It was no secret. They knew what was going on eventually, but he could have made a big deal about it early on. And, no one can get at the motive of that kind of evil. And, so back to the Jewish question, we'll call it. It's only a Jewish question in that what's going on now, which has been the worst man versus man the ugliest, the dirtiest, the scummiest, the most evil is the Israeli slaughtering in Gaza, the starvation of people in Gaza. And it's a very interesting Jewish question because Israel is strangely Gentile invented, although plenty of Jews had thought of this kind of way out, so to speak, invention, and a late colonial project that is opposed by probably around the world. It's opposed by as many Jews as Jews who support it. Not all Jews are this is commonplace, but not all Jews are Zionists. But the Zionist project is opposed on religious grounds by many Jews, by probably a majority of practicing and very religious Jews, and it somehow seems to have, in a subterranean sort of way, guided my reading. And ironically, when I ran out of book, I was left with an unread book by Ilan Pappé called The Ethnic Cleansing of Gaza. And now, as I talk to you and say goodnight, I'm bizarrely hoping that Donald Trump, for whatever, ignorant reason, whatever childish reason, decides to find a way to end the slaughter in Gaza, because I think that that's the last hope that Palestinians have in Gaza at this point. So we're in an odd place right now. There may be a complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza, and there may be nuclear war that begins with an attack on Iran, or we might have another deal with Iran that allows them to use nuclear fuel as they want to. And this is clearly understood by all honest people who've looked into it. The Iranians do not want a nuclear weapon. They would rather that the Israelis didn't either, but they don't want 250 nuclear weapons. They don't want to spend that kind of money, and they don't want that kind of war. These people have been around for thousands of years. They're very civilized. Anyway, and we're also, am I going to repeat myself? No, I'm not. Thank you. Good night.